She wasn't trying to inherit her father's fortune. She was trying to save herself. When 81-year-old Harold Fenton began struggling with his health, his eldest daughter, Nadine, quietly took control of his finances. A missing checkbook, a forged power of attorney, a secret reverse mortgage. Within months, $1.7 million had vanished from Harold's estate. His devoted son, Ethan, 48, couldn't understand how everything had disappeared without his father signing a single legitimate document. But when the case reached the courtroom, prosecutors uncovered a shocking motive. Nadine wasn't stealing to become rich. She was desperately trying to pay for a massive financial scandal that threatened to destroy her own life. Stay with us until the very end, because today's story proves that the most devastating inheritance fraud doesn't always begin with the promise of wealth. Sometimes it begins with someone willing to sacrifice the people who loved them just to escape the consequences of their own crimes. Harold Fenton was 81 years old and had spent his career as a maritime insurance broker in Portland, Oregon, retiring in 2010 after 32 years in the industry. He had built a careful and substantial estate over that time, including a paid-off home in a neighborhood he had lived in for 24 years, a diversified investment account, and savings that had never been touched unnecessarily. His total estate was valued at $1.7 million. His wife had passed in 2017, and his son, Ethan, 48, had taken on the informal role of managing his father's affairs and care as Harold's health began to decline following a hip surgery in 2021. Harold had 2 children. Ethan lived 30 minutes away and visited multiple times each week. His sister, Nadine, 54, lived in Seattle and had maintained a more distant relationship with the family over the years, appearing at holidays and calling occasionally, but never playing a consistent role in her father's daily life. Harold loved both his children without condition. He had told Ethan more than once that he hoped the 2 of them would manage his estate jointly when the time came. What Harold did not know, and what Ethan would not discover until much later, was that Nadine had been the subject of a civil fraud investigation in Washington state since early 2021. She had been a managing partner in a real estate investment firm that had raised funds from private investors under terms investigators alleged were materially misleading. The civil settlement demand from the lead plaintiff's attorney was significant. Nadine's personal financial position had deteriorated sharply as the case progressed, and her attorneys had advised her that a settlement in the range of $900,000 was likely unavoidable. Nadine had no legitimate way to raise that amount. She had a different kind of access. She began visiting her father more frequently in the spring of 2022, timing her trips to coincide with periods when Ethan was traveling for work. She presented herself to Harold as a daughter who had realized she had been too absent and wanted to make up for lost time. Harold, who had missed her, welcomed the visits without question. During one of those visits, Nadine located Harold's personal checkbook in the desk drawer where he had kept it for years. She removed it without mentioning it to him. Over the following weeks, she wrote 9 checks drawn on Harold's personal account, payable to an LLC she had established in Oregon under a name with no obvious connection to her. The total across the 9 checks was $230,000. She kept each amount below levels she calculated would trigger automatic review. Then she turned her attention to larger targets. Using Harold's personal information, which she had access to through years of family familiarity, Nadine obtained a template for a durable power of attorney and completed it herself, listing her name as Harold's designated agent with full financial authority. She arranged for a notary through a personal contact who did not know Harold and did not meet him before witnessing the document. The power of attorney gave her authority to act on Harold's behalf in all financial matters. With the forged power of attorney in hand, Nadine approached a reverse mortgage lender and initiated a reverse mortgage on Harold's home, presenting herself as his authorized agent. The lender, relying on the power of attorney, processed the application. The reverse mortgage closed in August of 2022, generating proceeds of $640,000 that were deposited into an account Nadine controlled. Then she used the power of attorney to contact Harold's investment brokerage and initiate a full liquidation of his investment account, requesting the proceeds be wired to what she described as a new consolidated account Harold had established for estate planning purposes. The brokerage, following its standard protocol for power of attorney transactions, sent a verification letter to Harold's home address. Nadine intercepted it during a visit before Harold saw it. The liquidation generated $830,000. Combined with the reverse mortgage proceeds and the check withdrawals, Nadine had accessed $1.7 million in less than 5 months. She transferred the settlement amount to her attorneys in Washington and used the remainder to pay accumulated personal debts. Ethan discovered that something was wrong in October of 2022 when his father mentioned offhandedly that he had received paperwork about his house that he did not understand. Ethan asked to see it. What Harold handed him was a document from the reverse mortgage lender referencing a closed transaction Harold had no memory of initiating.
Ethan called his father's bank the same afternoon. The account balance was a fraction of what it had been 6 months earlier. He called the investment brokerage and was told the account had been fully liquidated in August. He drove to his father's home and sat with him for 2 hours, asking careful questions, and came to understand that Harold had not signed anything, had not spoken to any lenders, and had not been aware of any of it. Ethan retained attorney Diana Cross, a probate and elder fraud specialist in Portland with 20 years of experience. Diana filed an emergency motion in Multnomah County Circuit Court to freeze all remaining assets and immediately reported the reverse mortgage transaction to the Oregon Division of Financial Regulation. She then obtained the power of attorney document from the brokerage records and sent it to a forensic handwriting examiner within days. The examiner's report was unambiguous. Harold's signature on the power of attorney was a forgery. The letter formation, pen pressure, and signature flow were inconsistent with any of Harold's verified signatures across a sample set spanning 20 years of banking and legal documents. Diana also obtained the notary's records, which showed the document had been witnessed in a location Harold had never visited and on a date when Ethan confirmed his father had been in a medical appointment in Portland. The notary, when contacted by investigators, admitted she had not met Harold in person and had notarized the document based solely on Nadine's representation that her father was unable to attend due to health reasons. The criminal investigation, which had been opened by the Multnomah County District Attorney following Diana's referral, then uncovered Nadine's civil fraud case in Washington state, the settlement timeline, and the precise correspondence between the settlement demand amount and the funds Nadine had transferred to her attorneys in the weeks following the reverse mortgage closing. The connection was not coincidental. Investigators obtained Nadine's bank records and traced every dollar from Harold's accounts through Nadine's LLC and personal accounts to the Washington settlement and her personal creditors. The hearing was held before the Honorable Judge Robert Pierce at the Multnomah County Circuit Court. Diana Cross presented the forensic handwriting analysis, the notary's admission, the reverse mortgage documentation showing Nadine as the initiating agent, the investment account liquidation records, the check images from the 9 withdrawals, and the full financial trail connecting Harold's money to Nadine's settlement payment and personal debts. She called the forensic handwriting examiner to testify in precise detail about the signature forgery. She called a representative from the reverse mortgage lender who confirmed the transaction had been initiated entirely by Nadine, acting under the presented power of attorney, and that Harold had never spoken with anyone at the company directly. She then called an investigator from the Washington state fraud case who testified about the settlement demand, the timeline, and the exact amount Nadine had paid following the liquidation of her father's investment account. Nadine's attorney argued that Harold had been aware of and had verbally approved of Nadine's management of his finances during a period of health difficulty. Diana Cross asked the court to explain how verbal approval could account for a forged signature on a power of attorney, a reverse mortgage Harold had never spoken to a lender about, and a notarization that had taken place in a location Harold had never visited, on a day when his own medical records placed him at a clinic 20 miles away. Judge Robert Pierce ruled that every financial transaction Nadine had executed using the forged power of attorney was void and unenforceable. He ordered full restitution to Harold's estate, including recovery efforts against the Washington settlement recipients where legally permissible. He referred Nadine Fenton Cruz to the district attorney for forgery, elder financial exploitation, fraud, and criminal misuse of a power of attorney document. Nadine was convicted on all counts and sentenced to 8 years in Oregon State Prison. The reverse mortgage was unwound through a court-ordered process that restored Harold's home to him free of the encumbrance. The investment account proceeds, recovered through asset tracing and civil enforcement, were returned to Harold's estate over the following 18 months. Harold Fenton remained in his home. Ethan visited every few days, the same as before. Harold told him once, several months after the proceedings concluded, that he still did not fully understand everything that had happened. Ethan told him that was all right. He said the court had understood it well enough for both of them. Nadine Fenton Cruz had built a professional career on managing other people's financial expectations. When her own came due, she turned to the one person who had never asked her for anything. The court ensured that choice cost her far more than the settlement she was trying to avoid. Would you know what to do if you discovered a forged power of attorney had been used in a parent's name? Tell us in the comments below. And if this story stayed with you, subscribe to Court of Shadows for more courtroom drama stories every week.